welcome to the very first Quantock Heritage Group podcast. So we are doing this as a normal podcast. We're also filming it as well, which will be on YouTube and other social media outlets. So my name is Antony Jones. I'm the, not finance, what am I?
Treasurer.
Treasurer, that's right. I can never remember that word. So I'm the treasurer, apparently, of the Quantock Heritage Group. My background in archaeology is time team, basically, but I also do a bit of filming and have done with the Quantock Landscape Partnership Scheme. To my left, I have Siobhan. Siobhan, who are you?
I'm Siobhan Elson. I am the membership secretary. I can remember my role.
Yeah, right.
And I also got into archaeology through Time Team, ended up doing an A-level and a degree in it. And because there is no money in archaeology, I ended up going on a completely different path. Excellent. But it's a very good hobby for me.
Very good. Thanks.
Sorry,
Next along, we have Denise. Denise.
I'm Denise Moyes, and I've had an interest in archaeology since I was a child. I did a history degree and then a certificate in archaeology afterwards, but then did the sensible thing and became a nurse. And always wished that I'd gone down the archaeological route and said, well, never mind, when I've got more time, I'll get back to it, which I have done through the Quantock Landscape Partnership Scheme, and very glad to be here.
Excellent, thank you. And last but by no means least, Ant.
I'm Antony Haskins, the other Antony, also known as Ant. I'm actually started off my archaeological career at the age of about 6 when my primary school was excavated in a little place in Hertfordshire called Bulldog. I've been doing archaeology commercially for 25 years these days, and this was an opportunity to give something back. I'm also, and I can also remember my position on the committee, the chair of the committee at the moment.
Right, I think there's going to be a bit of a theme going on here, forgetting things. So the reason we're doing this podcast is we have our first main project starting in a couple of weeks' time, and that is here in North Petherton, to do with the Festival of Archaeology, and we've got 3 main strands to it. So we will be doing the first of a multi-year, hopefully, test pit project. We've got a number of test pits planned for around here. The following week, we're going to be doing some geophysics over at Parkersfield, just to see what there is hiding under the ground over there. And then we've got a talk planned for the last weekend or the last Thursday of the month. But we thought that in this podcast, it might be good just to look back at the history of North Petherton and what is known and what is assumed, just to get a feel really of the area. So I think probably the best place to start is as far back as we possibly can go, which is Mesolithic.
I would actually go, we can go earlier than that.
Okay, so how early exactly would you like to go?
We're going to go back to probably the end of the last glaciation.
Okay.
We're talking probably something in the region of 12 to 16,000 years ago.
Okay.
North Petherton is on the edge of the Quantocks. There is a large amount of meltwater. There is large amounts of water coming off the Quantock Hills from the retreating glaciers, creating large river channels. And North Petherton itself sits within, or sits on, one of the remnant channels of that glaciation meltwater, which actually runs east to west into the levels and probably joins up with the River Parrot within the levels. Identified, well, you can identify it through LiDAR. It's also identified within the excavation from 1975. There was a small excavation at North Petherton in 1975 where they found the channel. The channel deposits they did identify were very sterile and very indicative of solifluction, so movement of large amounts of sediment through water and that changing the landscape. And there is clearly a massive cut within the Quantock Hills towards North Petherton on that east-west channel where that material has eroded out of the hills into the channel that now is probably still represented within the landscape by the Petherton Brook or Petherton Stream, depending on your naming of it.
But clearly it was a lot bigger back then.
Oh, it was significantly larger significantly large amounts of water,
Yep.
moving huge amounts of sediment and material. It's not a little stream, and it's probably at that point we're at the end of tundral landscape, so it's quite sparse, inhospitable. Think of things like Serbia in the permafrost, so possibly some small scrub kicking around, not a lot going on in terms of things to eat. People may be starting to show up.
Okay. So this is the Mesolithic people
We're talking about the Paleolithic.
Oh, even earlier. Okay.
Yeah. Talking about the Paleolithic. The Mesolithic, the early Mesolithic kicks in about 12,000 years before present, which does start occurring. There is some evidence of Mesolithic activity in the British Isles from that kind of period, but most of that's further east and north.
Yeah.
There isn't very much around Somerset. Having said that, the area that we're looking at, North Petherton, the Quantocks, they've not really been developed. There's not been a lot of archaeology. So we do know there's Paleolithic activity going on, things like Cheddar Gorge and the caves where there have been Paleolithic remains found. So there is potential of Paleolithic activity, but because there's so little archaeological excavation being undertaken at the moment, or has been undertaken, it's very difficult to start going, well, actually, we know. It's a lot more we don't know. What we do know is in the North Petherton area, moving into the Mesolithic, we don't really have the Paleolithic activity beyond we know that there's changes in the landscape, which is significant change in the landscape. As we move into the Mesolithic, it gets warmer. You start getting boreal forests, so we're starting to talk about oaks, hazels, that kind of thing. Hunting strategies change because the environment changes, what people are doing changes. And that's when we start getting Mesolithic activity. The nearest Mesolithic activity was a large flint assemblage found on the M5 corridor at Moon Farm.
Yep.
Can remember.
Just south of here. Yeah.
Which was a microlithic assemblage, which is characteristic of the Mesolithics. Microliths is where you make very small flint tools, because flint is a precious resource, especially in the southwest. Interestingly, a lot of the assemblage is green sand chert, which isn't surprising because it's going to be the nearest source of material that can be knapped. Green sand chert isn't as good as flint, but it will make a nice tool. And it's being brought in. Same with the flint, it's being brought into the area. It's not local. It's being transported in. They're utilising it. They're living probably on the edges of these former big glacial channels in this wooded landscape. And they're just basically doing their thing, hunter-gathering, moving around the landscape, identifying the resources.
So you said about flint, that it's a really important resource here because there is no natural flint, or not very, very little natural flint. So where would that have come from? Where?
Most likely the nearest locations for things like flint, and I need to check for the green sand chert, but I think the green sand chert is to the east and it's heading towards things like the South Downs.
Okay,
I need to check where the nearest, there is some banding of green sand. Some flint can be found in the Blackdown Hills. Not a lot. Most likely, most of it's coming from the south coast. And the chalk deposits towards the south coast. And we know they're mobile. We know they're moving around the landscape. How much they're moving around the landscape is a question that has never really been answered and is very difficult to answer. And we can compare it to some of the Aboriginal tribes in things like Papua New Guinea. And we can start looking at how they behave in relation to things like flint and such like. And you can start making inferences that actually these groups of people are probably travelling quite big distances.
Well, I suppose just following the meat, if you like, the
to a certain
food source.
Following the food, going for the raw materials themselves. So one example is in Papua New Guinea. One of the tribes specifically collects the stone that they work from one mountain. And no matter where they live, and the fact that there's mountains nearer with the same material, They always go to that one mountain because that's the one the ancestors told them to get the flint from, or the stone from.
Right.
So there is this kind of potential within early prehistoric activity that actually flint is much more significant. And certainly as we move into the Neolithic, it becomes likely that there is much more significance to do with working with flint and actually flint tools themselves. In the Mesolithic, it's much harder to say that. It's survival. It's they're making stuff that's functional to survive, to find food.
Okay. So Neolithic is the first time that people start to decide to stay in one place and farm as opposed to...
Gets complicated. We're not going into that.
So towards the end of the Neolithic, people were...
Towards the beginning of the end of the Mesolithic, towards the beginning of the Neolithic, people are probably becoming more sedentary. There is certainly clear evidence, especially in areas where there's rich resources, including in the British Isles, that Mesolithic people do become sedentary before they start farming. So there's examples in the Isle of Man, a lot on the northwest coast, around Carlisle, and in Scotland. There's very clear evidence. Further south, it's less clear. There's inferred potential Mesolithic houses, but it's this thing of, has enough archaeological work been done to identify them? Probably not, because of where they're found. They're found in areas which aren't developed. And within the British Isles, in particular England, a lot of our archaeology is due to development. It's not because people are going out looking for the archaeology and digging it. It's a developer's developing somewhere and then we're finding the archaeology. And if you start looking in the last 20 years, there's been a lot more Mesolithic and Paleolithic and Neolithic material found, primarily because we've changed where we're developing and we're moving into much more floodplains and nearer rivers because that's where we can develop and the landscape change.
And that's the beauty of what we're doing here with the test pits, that we'll actually be digging in areas that have never had archaeological digs in before, in people's back gardens, in grass verges, in fields.
Yeah.
So it should be a really important part of it. Okay, so moving on from Mesolithic, we've moved to Neolithic.
Yeah.
Is that?
The Neolithic, there isn't much. Again, it's this paucity of evidence because there isn't much activity in terms of actually looking for the evidence. We're not doing the work to find stuff. There is some known flint tools. There's been a smaller flint assemblage. There's a Neolithic component of the moon farm assemblage. So it's looking like it's a palimpsest assemblage, so it's multiple phases of occupation, all living on top of each other, going back to the same locations, probably for the same reasons. So it's probably the same raw materials or resources that they're hunting for.
Is it fair to say that the Neolithic finds that have been found in North Petherton, and there have been a couple, incidental, people have come on, they haven't been looking for them, they've just happened upon them?
It is entirely incidental. Nearly all of it is entirely incidental finds of chance finds. So there's been a couple of flint axes found, which may or may not be associated with Neolithic activity. There's been some small assemblages of worked flint, but again, it may not be indicative of occupational activity. It may be use of the landscape and somebody out foraging for trees or hazel being a very important resource in the Neolithic.
Okay. So moving on from Neolithic, so we look at Bronze and Iron Age. Is there much evidence of Bronze Age and Iron Age around here in North Petherton, or the area around North Petherton, really?
I think there's been quite a lot of sort of earthworks seen around the area, probably beyond North Petherton, because North Petherton itself has been much built on from the medieval period and continues to be so. But I think, it will be... I think one can assume they probably were here if the landscape permitted, because, as I say, the areas like up towards Clavelshay, Haddon's Farm, Broomfield, Rooks Castle, they're not a million miles away. And also, if you go out towards Bridgewater, where you're getting on lower ground as well, there are a couple of places there. I think they, we're here. We just haven't found them.
Well, we say that,
But
but there is the bronze dagger from Dyer's Green.
Yeah.
yes.
which is a Bronze Age dagger found in Dyer's Green, North Petherton. There's also evidence of Bronze Age settlement just to the east of Dyer's Green, which was found recently during an excavation run by Cotswold Archaeology
Yeah.
for a housing development. So there is tantalising glimpses that there may be Bronze Age activity going on within North Petherton, and certainly in other areas of the country there is quite extensive Iron Age activity, which would imply that there is some Bronze Age activity happening beforehand.
So this is great. So if you push the boundaries just a little bit, you can almost trace it through from certainly Neolithic through Bronze Age, Iron Age, and people were doing something here.
People are doing stuff here.
Yeah.
It's a very small island. Most of the island,
Just the people
throughout
stuff,
its history, people are doing stuff. Interestingly, and this brings on to things like Impens Farm and the Bridgewater Gateway, there does seem to be continuation of landscape use proven in the archaeological record, where there is things like Neolithic activity mainly associated with pits, which may or may not have some form of religious connotation. Religious not being necessarily the right word.
You're getting close to the R word there.
Ritual words.
There is stuff that happens with Neolithic pits which are a bit weird. Does imply that there is some reason why they're doing the activity they're doing, which isn't just a practical, functional, we're filling this pit in to do X. It's very much what archaeologists would consider place deposits. It's stuff where it's being intentionally put in the pits.
You've got a good view of the Quantocks, particularly over the sort of Bridgewater side of North Petherton, and the Quantocks, I think, it's got a bit of archaeology on it of a sacred nature, and it, to me, for what I know, it just seems reasonable that people would settle looking towards their hills because they're important.
You start going we start going looking at the funerary monuments. Barrows and the location of barrows. There are barrows in and around North Petherton as well, generally on the slightly higher ground, generally looking towards the Quantocks. The Quantocks themselves have many known barrows, so Bronze Age funerary monuments. So they have to be living nearby. We know there's big, probably monumental, or they are monumental structures on the Quantocks, which are either late Bronze Age or early Iron Age, which ties in with the Bridgewater Gateway, where it's mid to late Bronze Age activity kicking off before it moves into Iron Age activity. The Bronze Age landscape is being used and populated, and it's probably a much more managed landscape across the entire country than we realise.
Yeah.
Because it's always seen as this little small farmsteads with little family groups doing their own little thing. And you actually start looking and you go, well, why are they building monumental structures if it's little farmsteads where everybody's doing their own little thing?
Yeah, I mean, you've got big ones like a couple of years ago when we did the Broomfield one. I mean, that was massive, and it would have been all hands on deck to do that. So the call, I would imagine, went out to communities around. Bring your antler head, that sort of thing can help. Give us a hand,
So as we move towards the end of the Iron Age, some people from Italy moved over this way.
Not just Italy, they came from all over, but that was their centre, wasn't it? Yeah.
But then,
what have they ever done for us?
I was just going to say, what did the Romans ever do for North Petherton? Were they even here? Did we know?
Well, I have found, and it was verified by the portable finds officer, sometimes get a tiny thumb-sized piece of Roman courseware at the end of my garden, which I always say beats having fairies down here in your garden, doesn't it? Having Romans.
It does. Yep. Is there any other evidence that we've got though?
There's loads.
Okay.
Tons of it.
Give me some examples.
So again, when building the M5, the end of Parkersfield, they found evidence of a Roman settlement. There was extensive evidence of Roman settlement in North Newton, kind of moving towards North Petherton as well. And again, anywhere where there was Iron Age, there seemed to be evidence of Roman, so it just sort of carried on.
And we've mentioned Impens Farm a few times in this chat. There was also a hoard that was found there as well, which was a Roman hoard. So again, the Romans were definitely here. They were definitely doing
Absolutely.
stuff. And there may even be more evidence of that that might show itself up over the next few weeks.
We can hope.
We will wait and
We'll see
see.
what happens. I mean,
Yes, let's.
the Romans are very notorious within archaeology for leaving stuff everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, they weren't
So
very
if they were here, we will find stuff.
and it's funny. The Romans are definitely the thing that people who have an interest in archaeology, it always seems to be the Romans that they key in on. So it would be amazing to find stuff in North Petherton from that era. And then the Romans went, and they left us in the Dark Ages.
Well, they left us in an age where the technology was different. I mean, they did sort of upcycle Roman stuff to some extent.
Well, the Dark Ages is a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, it is not.
It's
It's old term. That's right. It's not at all. It's
Definitely
early
is.
medieval, is what we
And
like to say today.
The reason why it became called the Dark Ages is actually representative of that most Roman sites that were occupied in that period end up with a dark midden layer
Okay.
overlaying the Roman stuff, which probably forms due to Anglo-Saxon reuse and differential use of the Roman.
I think there was a bit of a move away from sort of Roman towns, for want of a better word, so people became a bit more sort of dispersed, and then towards the end of the period, sort of regrouped, as it were. There is not much evidence of the Anglo-Saxons in North Petherton, but that's the same all over the place because the technology, as I say, they it just doesn't last. Wood rots, leather rots, and they were more wooden leather than they were, ceramics and stone. But undoubtedly they were here. There's a lot of history around the area. Alfred,
Yep.
was hauled up on the levels.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And North Petherton was pretty key to defending against the Danes. There were skirmishes along the Bristol Channel, a couple at Carhampton. Watchet was repeatedly raided, and they're at the mouth of the Parrett. The men of Dorset and the men of Somerset saw them off. And the other, so it's important. We have sort of historic evidence of this in the Anglo-Saxon chronicles. You start to get the written evidence, and it's all we've got, so we have to go with it. But it's interesting document. It has all these things. Do you want to? No,
Keep
so the other important thing within North Petherton, if you look at the maps of the hundreds, the old hundreds, the hundred was an administrative area used by the Anglo-Saxons. North Petherton is smack bang in the middle of the Petherton hundred, which basically goes from Paula in the north down to Taunton in the south. It's a big area, so that would indicate that it was probably very important. We also have the church, which, the current building is 15th century, but it's a minster church, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest this. It's close. It's slightly down a slope. It's close to water. It's mentioned in Domesday, so it's likely that there was a minster church around, or if not underneath, the current church. And there's a lot of evidence from other Anglo-Saxon developments that the church was literally and metaphorically central to the developing towns. So any Anglo-Saxon, or a lot of Anglo-Saxon, if we find, if it were to be found, is going to be around the church, and that is the area that has been much developed. Did find some evidence when they did the 1975 excavation. They found some pottery. They found some evidence of buildings that were probably Anglo-Saxon. And as I say, it's mentioned in Domesday, which was sort of 20 years after 1066 and all that. And you don't get a mention in that unless you're pretty important, really.
And I think in Domesday, North Petherton was worth something like £42.
It was bigger than Bridgie.
Which was only £7.
Yeah.
Which I think is something we should all be proud of.
Absolutely, it was bigger than Bridgie.
Much bigger. And certainly, we've mentioned the church as an obvious symbol, if you like, or an obvious status symbol here. But there are other buildings around North Petherton as well that have survived from that time. I know there's one
later time.
certainly in Church Walk, I think, at the back of church. There's one there which is from the 16th or 17th century. There's the what's the name of the old hotel at the opposite the church?
Oh, actually.
No. Further on.
Oh,
down.
George.
Yeah, so the old George building as well. I mean, that's a medieval building.
I think that's 15th century.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you've got
it's
Liston Nursing Home.
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely right. So, and we referred just now to the dig that was done here back in the 1970s, and there was just some incredible information that came there from the people who actually lived here, the skeletons that were found, and one of the things that that cemetery seemed to hint at is that people were quite young who were dying. Now that might just be because the older people had already died before they used that grave, or it might be that people living in North Petherton were quite transient, and so they were quite young, and maybe they were coming in for farming work or
It's a difficult assumption because it's a very pocket and small scale excavation, and by the very evidence that within that excavation, it's likely to be an extension to the plague cemetery.
It's also
cemetery, so it's much more likely that the reason why it's lots of young people is it's actually plague.
The other thing is, though, that Minster churches actually had the burial rights for any other sort of small churches that might have been in the area, and it was quite late on. I don't know the date that when these smaller churches like Michael Church and whatever got their own rights to bury people. So it might have been an extension because of that, and then shortly afterwards, each church was burying their own. So it's hard to know really, but I agree. The fact that younger people dying to me would suggest plague.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, even though they had the time to individually bury people, it would seem, rather than just putting them in the plague pit. But then again, it was a small excavation.
It's
a
small excavation. It's also a small town. Relatively.
Yeah,
you get in the big plague pits.
Yeah,
you have a large scale
yeah.
population, and you have to get rid of a large number of bodies very quickly.
Yeah.
If you've got a
Makes you
small
wonder
town,
whether there's bodies buried out there and what would have been sort of hamlets and things, that they would have buried them in the back garden like we were supposed to do in the
there will be
previous outbreaks. Yes, yeah.
And then obviously we're coming into a more modern era, and we can see how North Petherton is growing and growing and growing at the moment. And I think there has been explosions throughout the history of North Petherton where it's grown, maybe shrunk and then grown again, and we're definitely in one of those phases of growing. So it's going to be a really interesting dig, I think, this year. The amount of things that we'll find hopefully will move forward the history of what North Petherton is and has been in the past. Anything in particular you're looking forward to or hoping to see in the next couple of weeks?
I'll be delighted if we found anything.
we'll find something.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely find something.
Sweet.
Probably,
Go
and
ahead.
ring pools, and things like that. But there is evidence that people have used the land and lived here. It would be nice to build on that and maybe begin to tie it all together, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the things that would be most interesting is how early can we get?
Yeah.
Can we find something which is a lot earlier and significantly earlier, i.e. Mesolithic, Neolithic? Can we find evidence that they might actually have been here properly and it's not just transient landscape use, it's actually settlement? Because although we know they're in the landscape, we don't have any evidence. The nearest settlement evidence for things like the Neolithic are the Bridgewater Gateway, Implan's Farm. To a certain extent, there's activity going on there which would be more indicative of settlement. There's nothing really known in North Petherton. But again, that comes back to this whole, it's an unknown. It's not really been dug. There's not been much archaeology done. So finding some traces of, and actually pushing the start of North Petherton properly back to the Neolithic, whether that's to the end of the Neolithic and 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, or to the start of the Neolithic and 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. We don't know, but that would be great. But it's about developing a better understanding of the use of the landscape throughout the whole history of the town. So seeing whether we can find some Bronze Age activity and understanding how the Bronze Age worked within North Petherton, or adding to that understanding of the Bronze Age, which is very scant again. Looking at the Roman and Iron Age, can we extend what's happening in the Roman period? Parker's Field is not that far away from quite a lot of known Roman archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the geophysics, which is a great training opportunity,
Yeah.
may give us something that could be more interesting.
And that's what we'll be talking about in the next one of these podcasts. So it will be maybe a month or so before the next one comes out, when we will have a lot more evidence of what's been going on here. So thank you, Ant. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Siobhan. It's been a really interesting chat. And thank you for watching or listening as well. Until the next time. Cheers.